Hey everybody, welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. Today we have Kamla K. Kapur, and we're talking about her book Rumi, The Tales of the Spirit, a journey to healing the heart. Beautiful. So, welcome, Kamla.
Thank you, CJ. Happy to be here.
So, what provoked you? Like, what? You're a poet and a playwright. Um, what provoked you to write this book, or prompted you?
Well, I truly believe that the roots of all religions and all traditions are the same. And they're all intermingled. If you were to imagine the earth and see beneath the surface of it, you'll see that everything is intertwined. And I feel that the roots are similar. So I first wrote a book from the Hindu tradition called Ganesha Goes to Lunch.
Oh,
Uh, and then I did a second book on Rumi because I wanted to actually write books from as many traditions as I could. And so I then wrote a book from the Sikh tradition. I was born into a Sikh family, and I'm a Sikh. And Sikhism is a very eclectic religion,
mm,
and our holy book includes saints from the Hindu tradition, from the Sufi tradition. So I wanted to put my heart and my labor, where my heart was. I wanted to show that demonstrate actually that all traditions have very similar threads and very similar
mm,
strains. And I wanted to show the similarities because we live in a very fractured world, not only religiously, but, politically, as you know. And I think it's really important to show that our connections, if we can see our connections, if we can comprehend and conceptualize them, I think that we would be creating a better world
mm,
for all of us.
mm.
So the Rumi book was in part, I wrote another book on Rumi called Rumi's Tales from the Silk Road, which were just 30 stories of Rumi. And this book has 12 stories of Rumi, but they're all followed by commentaries that I've written in order to show the relevance of the stories to our lives today. I
Mm.
mean, I feel that we can really, I think it's really important for us to listen to all the guides that speak to us throughout the ages from 2000 years ago, even further back, you know.
Mhm.
So it's important to listen to them and to not only listen to them, but Rumi has a wonderful image of it. He says, I took the holy words and put them like a earring in my ear, you know. So it's living by those words. We forget, we really forget that help is available to us from all corners of the world.
Mm,
We have only to look for it and we'll find it.
mm,
And it's available to us through books, you know, and of course living masters, but all our wonderful masters who are um, passed on in their bodies are still present through their words.
mm,
And we have a lot to learn.
mm.
We have many miles to go before we sleep, you know? So it's really important that the miles that we do tread, we tread peacefully and in loving compassion with everybody else on the planet,
Mm,
including ourselves,
mm.
including ourselves.
So it's interesting because I've always admired the Sikh religion because it is this all-encompassing. We have the ability to learn from everyone, and I don't really know anything about aside from people that I've met that are Sikh, sadly, I mean, only all I've met are cab drivers that I've met, and they've told me about their religion because I'm just curious, and I love that it's kind of this belief that there's truth in everything. So when you said that one of the things that prompted you is that you wrote about the Ganesh book, which is a Hindu,
Yes,
and then you are reading about Sufism. Sounds like
yes.
with and so what do you see as the common and part of what you're trying to do is tie the common themes. What are some of the common themes that you saw that that influenced your life when you somehow seeing those as is it fair to say are you Sikh at this point in terms of your religion?
I am a Sikh, and
Okay.
as a Sikh, I believe that all religions have validity,
Right.
and I can learn from all of them because all of them, like Buddhism, for example, appeals more uh, to our conceptual thinking about how we're going to think about life. The other religions are devotional, which
Mm,
are you love. You love the deity, you love that which is holy and sacred in life. And this great mystery that we personify for our own needs because we want to bring this energy and this power that has created the whole universe. We want to almost anthropomorphize it. We want to give it a body so we can hug it, and we want to give it a face so we can see it.
mm,
And Guru Nanak, the Sikh Guru, is very clear. He says this energy has no eyes and no face and no feet, and yet it has, you know, 7 billion eyes and 7 billion feet, which
yeah.
means that we all manifest this high energy. We are all expressions of it.
Mm,
So, this is, I think that the first message that's common to these three traditions, the Hindu, the Sufi, and the Sikh, and Christianity, not so much Buddhism, because Buddhism is atheistic,
mhm.
in some ways. But many of our traditions believe in a deity, in a powerful being that is beyond us,
Right.
that is beyond us, but within us. I mean,
Right.
it wouldn't make any difference at all if it was beyond us. It wouldn't
Right.
matter to us.
Right.
But it is within us. It is inside us. We manifest it. We can hear it in our souls, you know. And this energy that's neither male nor female. Guru Nanak, the Sikh Guru, the founder of Sikhism, says it's neither male nor female.
Mm,
Yet it manifests as male and female. It is beyond gender. So that's one of the first lessons, that turning to this power and this energy, which is a very small gesture. You can either face your ego or you can face the supreme deity. When you
mm.
face your ego, then you get into all sorts of conflict and trouble and agitation and anxiety. But once you face this higher self, then what you have, it's actually, most of your problems are solved because you're surrendering to something that takes care of and organizes and runs this whole show, including you.
Yeah, I love it. I feel like you're speaking directly to my soul in my recent circumstances, which I was about to write an article. I keep on having an article that wants to a writing article or blog post that wants to come from me, and the title would be "Your Guru Ain't Your Daddy." Um, and
You what?
your guru ain't your daddy.
Yeah.
And the and as I would talk from my friends are like he or she ain't your daddy, your financial planner, your relationship planner, It's
Absolutely.
and it's interesting.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because what happened to me was in the when you were talking about the devotional practices like Sikhism, Hindu, Sufi, where we want, I don't know if this is true of Sufism because I don't know enough about Sufis and their tradition, but I know with Hindus, like there's gods like Ganesh, and that's like a symbolic one, but then there are these gurus who
Yes.
represent because we want to, as you said, hug and love and like feel like
Yes.
God is in our presence at this very moment.
Yes.
And I realized when I did that, I was enmeshed. I like layered on top of my teacher all sorts of things. Like, oh, he reminds me of my father, all these kinds of egoic things that I lost sight of that. My teacher, who's a male, is just someone who is a conveyor. Deep within inside of him is the thing that's within inside of me, and that's always present, whether the teacher is there, whether the teacher is not there, and it's the challenge of the ego, like not realizing that my ego is like there's CJ with my teacher, also a person personified, and it's not our two egos at all; it's our two spirits, and
To
so
spirits.
yeah,
Yes.
and so what you said just kind of resonated with me at such a deep level because I think even though a lot of these traditions, may have a conveyor, a teacher, a guru that is offering these things, I think sometimes we forget. We get confused. Um, I don't know. That's what inspired me and what you just said.
Yes, you're very right. God is your daddy. I have very fond memories of my father. My father, in a way, was also my mother because he gave me the nurturing that my mother
Me
didn't,
too. Yeah.
couldn't give me for some reason. So, in a way, I think I can hug God. I think I can sleep with God. I think that I can and by God, I don't want to use the word God because it's been so overused and people forget what it really stands for. I mean, God is this energy that's pulsing everywhere, in our eyes, in our bodies, in our beings, in others, in trees, in rocks, in oceans, in rivers, in clouds, all of this is God. And because we can't hug oceans and trees, we can't hug trees. We've got this being that can be as close to us as we need it to feel secure and loved and trust, and trust the universe.
Right.
So, and gurus are, whether, like you said, whether they're present or they're absent. Even when they're absent, they're present because it's really important to remember that the invisible, what Rumi calls the invisible, you know, is, he says, it's closer to you than your jugular vein.
Mm.
you know it is as close to you, whether your living is guru, your guru is a living guru, or whether your guru is somebody who's passed on but whose words linger in your mind and reverberate in your heart, like my gurus, most of my gurus, like Rumi, like Guru Nanak, are they echo in my ears
Mm.
every time I'm going through a really hard patch. Something will pop into my head or my heart, and everything will be resolved. You know,
Mm.
and
Mm.
and that is the purpose, and that is the wonderful aspect of having a guru, trusting the guru, and turning to the guru when in need.
Mm.
Not to your own ego, because your ego is only going to screw you up further.
Do you have an example, in your own personal example, where you were turning to your ego and you used Rumi or Ganesh or whatever your guru? Because as I'm hearing you explain this, the way that you define a guru is there's actually a live human being in that you have as a guru. Then there's Rumi who has passed, who is a guru. So how do you define guru? Number one, and then how have you consulted your gurus in time when your ego is just messing you up?
Um, all the time. I'm consulting with my gurus absolutely all the time. I'll give you a recent example from, for example, Rumi always says, and there are stories in the book about surrendering to the cosmic will, and you can say surrendering to God, or you can say surrendering to the higher power, surrendering to that which you cannot change through
Mm-hmm.
all your efforts, you know. So, um, uh, and when you surrender, I go through very specific. Most of my problems are ego related. For example, I was just interviewed by PBS on Guru Nanak, and I was getting really agitated and tense about it.
Right.
And so I just remembered, surrender what is happening
Wait,
to
can I
the
just go
Guru.
into it a little bit? What were you actually getting if it's not too personal, what were the kind of like what was the ego saying about
The
this?
ego was saying, I want to be really good at this.
Okay.
The ego was saying, I want to be brilliant,
Right.
and the ego was saying, I want to know everything about this
Right.
before I talk about it. But
Mm.
to be brilliant and to know everything about it, it's a heady thing. It's
Mm.
a heady thing. But once you surrender, you return to your heart, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when you surrender, you take away the resistance that the ego puts up.
Mm-hmm.
The ego puts up a lot of resistances. This is not right. That's not right.
Right.
I want to be better. I hope I'm not bad. I hope I'm not terrible. But once you surrender, you just surrender to what is, and you allow yourself to be an instrument of what is coming through you.
Mm. Mm.
And we are ultimately, all of us, instruments. And in order to become true instruments, like Rumi has the example of a flute. What is a flute? A flute is empty. There's no
Mm.
ego. There's no ego in the flute. That's why the wind and the breath can blow through it.
Mm.
You know,
Mm.
so we have to be so clean that the universe can play its music through us.
Mm. Mm.
The universe can dance through us. So surrendering brings us back into our hearts.
Mm. So
And
you're in this PBS interview and you
yes,
wanted to be brilliant and the authority and expert. And then how did the Rumi's concept of a flute or what other type of Rumi poem or story, and was it instantaneous or was it something more of just a feeling that you thought, okay, I just have to surrender? What was it for you?
well, because I've been studying Guru Nanak, I'm going to give you an example from him. And, he has a line. He says, if you want to conquer the world, conquer your mind.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it's the mind that says, I want to be brilliant. I hope I don't sound like a stupid idiot.
Right.
I hope that everything goes right. So once I conquered that and gave myself affirmations that the universe has given me this opportunity for commenting on Guru Nanak, and I feel very humbled by it. And if the universe has given it to me, the universe will work through me. So that's
Mm.
an example of how you conquer your mind, you know.
Mm.
And like Rumi says, and Guru Nanak says, be humble. And
Mm.
what is humility? Humility is taking that big lump of your ego and putting it aside
Mm-hmm.
so that you can become the instrument and you can function better in life. You
Mm.
can function with more joy, more peace, with more love. And that's the other common theme in all these traditions. The highest thing you can learn in life is to love. Rumi says, for example, love is the telescope to the mysteries of God.
Mm.
And he makes no distinction between loving human beings and loving God, because love is love, whatever you want to call it, whether you
Mm-hmm.
want to call it human or divine or for the higher spirit. Love is a feeling that we all know, that we all want, that we all live for. And if we are not living for it, let us start living for it now, because it's our highest experience.
Mm-hmm.
It is our best experience. It is our most expansive experience that includes everyone and everything and every minuscule part of our lives. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you can love things also. Like Guru Nanak says, if you love gems, for example, remember that even the gems are singing. They are singing of their beauty to the vast supreme being
Mm.
for being created. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so see God in everything. See
Yeah.
God in everything.
I love the idea of also combining love and surrender. I mean, in the story that you have it, I think it was called The Witch of Cabal. There's
Yes,
this idea of love and surrender, or maybe surrendering is love because you're surrendering to a higher power that you just don't understand. But at a certain point, you just have to accept, even though you don't understand it. Um,
yes,
yeah. How?
yes. And how you can't love without surrender. You know, the opposite of surrender is power.
Hmm.
Uh, Thinking you're powerful and can do it all on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, once you surrender, then your heart opens out.
Mm.
And you know, so power will never get you love. I mean, even if you look at human relationships, you know, if you try to always try to dominate your partner, or you try to be right in in the relationship, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you think you're the only one that has a monopoly on the truth,
Yes,
you know.
I do
So
know.
if you do that, you will not find love here or there,
Mm. Mm.
anywhere. But if you can be humble enough to say, hey, maybe I am wrong, maybe I can be wrong, or maybe I can be better, maybe I can love more, maybe I can think a little bit more about the other person, maybe I could be kinder and more compassionate, then
Mm.
you'll find love here, right here in your life, and
Mm.
everywhere, everywhere.
Mm. Okay, so I'll tell you, share a recent example of that situation where when I realized that my guru is not my daddy, but like I love and support, and he functions very similar in some ways. If your guru is kind, loving, nurturing, teaching you basically how to operate in this unseen world, I think they have a lot of that same kind of archetype that could be confusing for it was confusing for me. Let me put it that way. And this was all brought up by um, uh, uh, what I viewed as an infraction from my teacher.
Uh-huh.
Wasn't necessarily, you know, it's like not a parking ticket, not like murder, not molesting, like none
Yeah.
of those things, right? But in my
Uh-huh.
world, it was. I mean, to put it in the correct frame, was more in the like speeding ticket, right? Did something
Okay.
that could harm someone, didn't harm me, but still, I wanted to, like a cop, write up the violation and report
Ye-
back to my teacher.
yes.
You were speeding. The law says 60, 55, miles per hour, and you sped to like 90, and I'm a little bit ticked off. And I sat with that for a really long time, wondering, should I say something? Should I not say something
To your guru.
to my guru? Because, first of all, who made me the traffic cop in this scenario? Like,
Exactly.
why am I the
You're judging yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like and what in my ego makes me want to be right? Like I'm like, just so you know, you said X, which is according to your rules, and then you broke X. And so now I'm going to write you up on a citation of the own rules that you wrote, and so there was a part of me that wanted to do that. It was my ego, and it was the wanting to be right, versus love, where it's, you know what? We're all infallible. You are a human being. You are not a God.
Yes.
Therefore, you will make mistakes, just like I make mistakes. And so,
Yes.
if I want someone to show me compassion and love when I make mistakes, you're no different. Why, just because you're my guru, why wouldn't I love and show compassion for? And I think I even understand why. I don't, and even what I understand is probably wrong. But at least I've crafted a story where I can come up with just a sense of compassion and love that, yeah, we make.
Was your was your guru harsh with you about this?
No,
No.
no.
Okay. What you're talking about is a very deep human issue,
Hmm.
and it is we are fallible. We can go wrong. We do go wrong. We are fools, actually.
Right.
We keep you know we know what's right, and we keep. It's like in these comedies, with slapstick comedies, where they keep falling and
Right.
tripping on the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
So it's a really fine line between taking responsibility where you need to take responsibility for where you go wrong, learning from it without beating yourself up about it. You know, we go wrong to learn, to understand better, and to try to avoid doing the same thing over and over again that hurts us, that hurts others.
Hmm.
And the way that we can do that is by taking responsibility for our own behavior, and taking responsibility with kindness,
Right.
without being our own policemen
Right.
with guns.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's I think that and I think I would extend it further, which I hadn't until just this conversation, and extending it to, and I have felt a sense of forgiveness, like, okay, I forgive. But the police cop in me, which is my ego, is like, still need to write up this, like, do I really need to say something? Because we're in this very tender time in the country, right? Where people are feeling put off on all sorts of different things. Joe Biden
Yes,
kissed the back of my head.
yes,
Someone touched me in an inappropriate way. There's all sorts of things where people are feeling that they're it's like speaking truth to power. And so there's
yes,
that kind of energy that is filtering around. And so, should I say something so that, my teacher can grow? Because maybe what I have to offer is something that he's doing uniformly. And maybe if someone spoke truth to him, in a kind, compassionate way, he could
yes,
learn. Or maybe it's
yes,
like, from what I understand, people have brought up these kind of traffic violations in many instances. And his response, as I understand it, I don't know if that's going to be true for me, but it's kind of like, you're projecting onto me, which completely I own, I agree, but I guess the question is, when do you speak truth to power, or when do you just like, this is not any huge harm to me, just love and forgive?
but you have to speak your truth. If you don't speak your truth, it's going to fester inside you. And I think that, but you're very right by saying that you have to speak your truth firmly, but kindly. I mean, it's learning how to communicate.
Right.
It really is learning how to communicate uh, by saying what you need to say, what your soul needs to say, and by realizing that the person that you're speaking to on the other end is also vulnerable. So doing it compassionately, doing it kindly. But we are responsible. We really are responsible for speaking our truth. I
Mm.
think a lot of trouble happens in relationships when you don't speak up, when you
Mm.
don't say, I mean, um, I have a very specific example for you right
Okay,
now. For
sure.
example, my husband consumes much less than I do in
Hmm.
terms of goods, for
Okay.
example. you know, I love clothing, like
Yeah.
necklaces or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
small things. And I order from online, and he always used to get pissed at me for ordering too much, leaving too much of a footprint on the planet. And I
Right.
can understand that intellectually, but emotionally, I still need some things,
Right. I want that necklace.
So I had to write him a letter and say, listen, you know, this isn't your business. It's my business. I'm spending my own money and I can get what I want. And I need you to be tolerant of the differences between us.
Hmm.
It worked.
Huh.
It worked. And it goes to his credit that he was open to listening to me,
Right.
to listening to my truth and what I had to say,
Hmm.
you know.
Well, you're
Um,
you're a poet and a writer. So a lot of poets and writers, like they speak their truth. That's part of your job, and so to speak. But have there been times when you didn't speak your truth, and what was the outcome of that?
well, whenever I didn't speak the truth, I'm only just beginning. I would say one is always only beginning to speak one's truth,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know,
Mm.
and I think that when I don't speak my truth, for example, I didn't speak my truth with my brother about inheritance,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
he felt entitled to all of it being male.
Right.
So I had to learn to be a warrior. I mean, I festered inside myself for a very long time
Mm.
before I stood up for myself. And it's really unnecessary. I'm learning more and more to speak my truth as soon as it arises in my heart.
Mm. Mm.
You know, don't let it sit there too long. It'll rot. You
Mm.
know, it'll turn to garbage.
Yeah.
And so it's really, and in order to speak your truth, you have to be fearless. This is one of the things that you have to remember.
Mm.
You know, what is the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is that you may break with that person.
Right.
Okay, isn't that the worst?
Yeah, yeah, that
And
it's conflictual to the point that your relationship breaks up, or there's a
yeah,
conflict that can never be that is just like sticking. So, like if you had said to your brother, I really think, whatever you had said something to your brother, then it's like now my brother and I have this conflict of my
yes.
father's inheritance that will weigh over every conversation that we have, and so is it worth commenting on it, or not? Right? Because
Yeah.
I'm going to be in a
Well,
relationship with my brother for a very long time.
I commented on it for 3 years and now I'm done. And now I'm free of it.
Mm.
I'm not going to bring it up. I I don't if I when I talk with him when I go to India, it's about chit chat. It's really not about anything. I'm not going to bring it up till he brings it up because he knows exactly what I feel about this, and I don't need uh, to stew with this.
Right.
You need to let go of things. I mean,
Mm.
why you don't let go of things is because of ego again. It all boils down to ego. You
Right.
know what, and it goes back to conquer your mind.
Right.
If the same thing is going over and over and over in your head, you have to say enough. You know,
Right.
enough. I don't want to go there,
Mm.
and we have that choice.
Yeah.
We have that choice not to
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that what happens when you don't speak your truth. I had a recent example where I was worried about something and I didn't say something to my friend. And then what happened is the conversation took a weird discourse and we got into an argument. And had I just said what was worrying me in the very beginning, like, I don't know why, but I'm worried about this. And I just want to tell you, is this something that I should be worrying about with our respect or relationship? But I didn't. So that worry preceded our conversation, and she just hit me with something that she said that kind of triggered that worry. And then I got into this warrior defending mode, and we got into an argument, which is not what I wanted at all. But it was because I didn't speak my truth. So I do think that things fester if you don't speak
Yes,
your truth. And so the question is, will this fester? Will not speaking the truth fester and cause me harm? So,
yes,
the woman who spoke about Biden, was there, would saying nothing cause her harm? Or was
yes,
this like a political maneuver that was just,
yes.
and is now her saying that going to cause her harm?
But
So,
again, there's a really fine balance here. I think the Me Too movement is great. I mean, we've got to stop being objects of men.
right,
That's the bottom line,
right.
you know. But these little things, you touched my hair, you know, I find that puts too many boundaries around us. We have to know what is appropriate, but we also have to know when your heart is reaching out of love to touch somebody's hair, you
Mm,
know. So it's and so it's really knowing, developing that fine scale within us to know when when you need to speak up about something, and when, even if this woman who spoke about, she touched the back of my head and she needed to say that, fine. But, you know,
well, if the intention was out of, I assume, knowing other men of that generation, not that it condones older men to do anything that they want just because they're ignorant and were raised in a different time. I think
yes,
he kisses men's head and women's head. It's an
yes,
expression of warm-hearted love. And so I feel
yes,
very conflicted when I hear that. I'm like, well, it's good that you spoke your truth, but apparently kisses everyone's head. This was not a sexual exploit or something in which it was
yes,
treating you in a diminutive fashion. It was
yes,
about expressing love and
yes.
appreciation. And so when you put boundaries on how someone expresses love, is that more harmful or helpful when I don't know. It was a
Well,
very,
I think it's harmful. I think it's harmful for people who put too many boundaries around themselves.
right.
But my father, for example, always, when he met my friends, he would hug them.
Yeah.
You know,
Me
how
too.
he would stroke their hair. Sort of like, and they always liked it
Yeah.
because it was like it's like, we humans are meant to touch,
Right.
but but there with women there are boundaries. We always know when something is inappropriate.
Right.
Somebody touches the back of my head, even if it's somebody I don't know, but the touch itself, and you can always gauge whether the touch is aggressive, whether it's upsetting, or
Right.
whether it's just a touch.
Right.
You know,
But who I can also say, if she was an abuse victim, any touch from any guy that's uninvited is an abuse
ex-
of something. So I guess it all depends. It's really subjective. If it caused harm to her, then
yes, it is
people need to
subject.
be more conscious that even a well-intentioned, gender specific action could cause
Yes,
harm to others. So it's a very hard one to know. I mean, this whole speaking truth to power is something that I've been really looking at and exploring because I'm working with a lot of activists now. And it's like, how do you do so? I think to your point, how do you do so with kindness and with love in your heart, not with trying to make someone wrong? And I think that that's the
Exactly.
challenge. Yeah, it's a challenge.
Exactly, exactly, and that's what is called compassionate communication.
Right,
Uh, that and you can only do it if you're not coming from a very aggressive stance,
right.
and you cannot come from an aggressive stand if you kind of rein in your ego and see the other person as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
instead of an object of attack.
Right,
So so it is. See, these are the lessons that we are here to learn,
right.
and all our situations in life, all our conflicts in life, uh, are to be welcomed, like Rumi says.
Mm-hmm.
All our suffering is to be welcomed because suffering is a door. It
Mm.
is a portal that allows us to explore ourselves and
Mm.
our feelings.
Mm-hmm.
We are
Mm-hmm.
suffering about something. It means we need to sit down and meditate on that.
Right. Right. Yeah. So for Rumi, I just want to talk a little bit as we come to the last 10 minutes of the interview. So we've talked a lot about how Rumi affects our daily lives, or how these teachers, these gurus, and you're writing about these, affected your PBS interview, or how these kind of universal truths about acceptance and love and suffering affect our lives, like they did with me. Um,
Yes.
Anything else that you want to share about Rumi and how it affects our daily lives?
Yes, I think that one of the things that's important to do in life is pray, and I know from my own life, and we're not praying to a deity that is sitting out there and is an authoritarian patriarchal deity that we have to bow and scrape before. Prayer is a dialogue between your heart and your higher self, the heart of
Mm,
your higher self. And when you pray, you are given a recourse to all your problems. For example, when I am conflicted about something, I surrender that. Conflict is two equal forces, this side, that side, this side, that side. But if you surrender that conflict to this higher being that is within you, and you say, please solve it for me, you know, I am incapable of doing that. Guide me, you know,
mm,
show me the way. I mean, what is the meaning of the word guru? It
mm,
is one who dispels darkness,
mm,
you know. And so that is another lesson which I follow every time. It's like Don Quixote and his horse. Every time he comes to a crossroad and doesn't know whether to go left or right, he just loosens the reins of his horse, and his horse decides which way to go, you
mm,
know. And the horse is a symbol of our instincts and of the higher self that knows much more than our brains and than our egos know.
mm,
So this is another thing that Rumi says. And I mean, Rumi is full of lessons for our daily life,
mm,
as are all our guides.
mhm,
As are all our guides.
mm,
And we must realize that even though they existed thousands of years ago, and I personally follow gurus that have passed on because I don't want the conflict of, human relationships in the flesh can be very conflicted.
mm,
This way, for me, my gurus come to me in a very pure form.
mm.
You know,
I do
they they
understand.
they come to me in a very pure form. So, to trust our gurus and to trust our guides, to trust our prophets, and to surrender to them and to listen to their words and not just listen, but imbibe them,
Mm,
metabolize them,
mhm,
you know,
mhm,
and live them.
mm. Mm.
So that is a very important lesson for us. And that is what my commentaries in this Rumi book address.
Right. To take these real life examples and say, okay, I don't know. I'm not sure whether to speak truth to power and knowing that it's my truth and not necessarily the universal truth. So, do you say something? Do you not? How do you say so in a compassionate way? So, just saying, I don't know, you know, Shiva, tell me what to do. Please, I'm
Yes.
going back and forth. Literally, I'm going back and forth every single day. Should I say something? Should I not say something? Should I say something? Should I not say something?
Well, I think you should act in this situation. And I think that when you
You
are
mean a
in a
prayer?
place,
Ask like,
you can ask in the prayer.
hmm
And I think that when you are so conflicted and it's sucking up all your energy, I think that the prayer might tell you to speak something, because to power, if you don't speak to power, we are submitting,
hmm
and we are enslaving ourselves, and
hmm
power needs to hear what we need to say,
hmm
if especially what we feel is sincere, and if what we feel is hurting us.
Right.
We all have to do it in our own lives.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to do it for us. We have to do it in our relationship with our friends. We have to do it in our relationship with our significant others, with our parents. And we have to say it without charge. If you say
Mm.
it without charge, then you're instigating charge in the other person.
Right. Right. No, the
You
whole
know,
idea of
you
like
if you
hatred begets hatred.
Yes. If you
hmm
just say, I have been feeling this, and I would appreciate your just listening to me for 2 minutes about how I'm feeling about this, um, I think the other person will be receptive.
Right.
It's how you approach it,
Right.
that the results depend upon that.
Right.
And
Yeah.
you might feel tremendous relief, and the other person may be receptive to it. If the other person is not receptive to this sort of honest speaking from the bottom of your heart about your feelings, then you have to reconsider that relationship.
Yeah, that's fair. That's actually
you
very
know
fair. Yeah, if you
and
can't be in
and
that way.
another message that all these guides give us, that is that you what is it in life that we are most afraid of? The most that we are afraid of on the highest level is death,
hmm
loss of everything,
Right.
you know and that's the other example I live by. Rumi says that, Guru Nanak says that, all our guides say it. We have to embrace death. And once we embrace it, we become fearless. You know,
Mm.
you have to see it through to the end. For
Mm.
example, lately I'd sold a flat in India, which I'd paid taxes for, and I want to declare it to the IRS here. And it really irked me and pissed me off that I would have to pay double taxes.
Right.
And then for about 20 minutes, I was really upset about that. And then I thought, well, you know, if I'm when I die, I'm going to leave that money to somebody. So why not give it to the IRS if he wants it? Buy my peace of mind. Buy my peace of mind.
Right.
If you remember death, then every loss is not a big deal.
Right, that's true. I love that. That's like a really interesting thing. So if you think about like what are you afraid of death? Is this worse than death? And I don't even know if I fear death that much. So I don't know if that works for me, but I can see how that would work for many people.
Yes.
But that gave you your answer. I love it. We've been talking to Kamla K. Kapur about her book Rumi: The Tales of Spirit, and how how Rumi can affect your daily life. And much like what we've been talking about. Her book not only shares the stories of Rumi's stories, but then your interpretation about how, in fact, we can live, how we can live with these truths in our daily lives and apply them to our lives. And I think that's what makes the book different, frankly, because I think there are a lot of poems, but the interpretation from someone who has studied in earnest in their heart, trying to understand the commonalities, I think will is a gift to us all. So thank you, Kamla. Thank you for being
Thank
here.
you, CJ. I appreciated your laughter. It's delightful. And I appreciated your honesty. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you too.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show and would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.